Hello, everyone, and welcome to Adobe Live. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Anna McNaught, and I am the host today. And today I am joined by the incredible photographer and retoucher, Elena Paraskeva. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm great. Thank you, Anna. Hey, guys. I am super happy. I'm joining Adobe Live for, I think, a third time. And just wanted to take a moment to introduce myself. I am a conceptual fashion portrait and commercial photographer. I do a lot of work for brands.
Let me just pause right there. Before you go into everything, I just want to welcome everyone into the chat and also let people know to subscribe on our YouTube channel and be sure to follow Adobe Live on Instagram. And now I want to hand it over to you, Elena. I just didn't want to jump in yet without saying hello to all of the people in the chat. I know.
Too excited to get it all started.
Yes.
So yeah, a few words about me. I split my time between like my commercial fashion business and my fine art photography. You can see here like some of my work for clients. I do motion for perfumes, liquor brands, as you can see here. But I also, and I have, you know, a pretty big like portfolio when it comes to conceptual portraiture. Really showing you quickly here some of the work. And I also do my own personal series that I exhibit. My last exhibition was at the European Parliament in Brussels this March. And I have an upcoming exhibition at the Florida Museum of Photographic Arts. Yeah, I've exhibited in London, New York, Paris, Barcelona, Tokyo. So that's half of my life as a photographer, and half of it is dealing with clients. So let's yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, I have a huge portfolio. I don't have time to take you through it. If you want to, you know, visit my work, just go to my website, elenaparaskeva.com. But for now, I'd like to go to Photoshop and jump into what I'm going to be showing you today. My work called A Room with a View.
I love that.
It is kind of like a modern take on Rapunzel trapped in a room, but on a budget for photographers that don't have like a big budget, you know, to create a whole room. Because, you know, I admire photographers, let's say like the Spanish photographer Eugenio Ricuenco, but he does a lot of these things, you know, in big dark rooms, but he has a team of about 20 people and big budgets. So what do you do if you don't have a budget? Well, you have to get creative, and that's what I wanted to show you. And I'm going to show you how this started, which is just a box. This is foam board. So I created it, I cut up the window, and I created the foam board. The different walls of the room. It's actually a small room. If you think about it, we're talking about like 25 inches. You know, it's not that big. And then, yeah, I mean, it's a small thing. And I then gradually brought in my props, and then I photographed my subject separately. Now, I want to take some time today because my tutorial today is not just about what do we do in Photoshop. It's also how to light a scene, because this requires some knowledge on how to light it. Okay, you can't just like, you know, use elements as you find them, or maybe, you know, from stock photography and just put them in here. It takes planning. So for this scene, I wanted to create the feeling of sunrise. Okay. So I first placed a large octabox in the front, like next to my camera, to provide even lighting into this room. And to my left, outside of the box around here, I placed a reflector, a hard light with nothing to soften the light, and a color gel, a soft, a warm color gel. It was like orange to give me this shadow, the glowy, warm shadow that you see on the opposite wall. And I brought in my props and I photographed it. Now, when I brought in the subject, I had a gray background, which was pretty similar to this color, the gray, but you can't get it exactly because it's printed paper, right? So I kept the lighting the same with the octabox in the front. However, on the side here, where my model was standing, I replaced the hard reflector with a beauty dish because I didn't want the light to be so harsh on my model's face. I also placed a lighter color gel, like not as dense, because obviously I didn't want my subject to end up being orange. So that's the prep work that I did. Now I'm going to show you, let me disable the layer mask. This is the original setup. I put a woolen ball in the middle. And of course, because I knew what I was going to do, that's why I wanted the foam board, because I wanted to put the needles in the foam board. Otherwise, how are you going to keep them straight up, right? And then, of course, I placed some more threads. Sort of, remember that story that she put her hair down, right, for the prince to climb up? Well, it was a reference to that. And you can see here the lighting, right, that it works. You see that over there, the yellow highlight here? It's like it works. It's the sunrise and it's hitting that, and it makes it realistic. Now, you know why did I shoot them separately and not just like have one image? And why did I delete this part here? Well, because when a person is standing on this ball, what happens in reality? This is pushed down, right? So if I keep it like this and put my subject up here, it's not going to look realistic. So I needed to capture this separately. So let's say we can go to object selection, right? And choose this one. So I did Command C, Command V to choose it, right? So now, look, right? And we have it separately. So what can we do now? Well, we can go to liquify and apply liquify to push it down. I'm going to create another one, erase this one, and I'll tell you why I have two layers later. So let's go to liquify, right? Let me maximize the brush. Here we have it on push it. We're going to push it down, right? I don't use a high pressure. You see up here, my pressure is set to low because, let me move this. Let's say I have it to almost maximum. See that? It messes things up. So you got to keep your pressure low. So let's push it a little bit, fix this edge here. Now, I did also something else. I used the bloating tool here and applied that a little bit because as a person, stands on it, some of the threads will be pushed out. So let's push it a little bit more.
Yeah, really good attention to detail here, because I think a lot of people, when they're compositing, they're not really paying attention to those little things that happen in the real world, and this is amazing.
Anna, I'm obsessed. Listen, the thing is, if I'm gonna do something, it's gotta look real. Otherwise, I'm not gonna do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that.
Now I'm zooming in, and let me show you why I kept two of them. Because if you don't, if you don't do that, to me, it still looks like it's a little bit flat. and not three-dimensional. So I kept that, and what I did is kind of went and erased this. And I did a better job before in the actual one. And it kind of shows here that it shows that there is more dimension here. I'll show you the actual work here. You see that?
Yeah.
How this is coming like that, and it's ready for her foot to be placed here. I mean, guys, you know, I don't have a lot of time, so, you know, I have a lot of things to show you. Therefore, I just showed you quickly what the process was, but this took me some time because, you know, I had to make sure, oh my God, because I already knew how I placed my model. So I knew that she needed to put one leg here and one leg right here. So I did it exactly so it would fit, okay? So that's that for now. I'm deleting what I did here. Okay, now, how do we make this room more realistic? We need textures, right? The wall doesn't look like this. This is not a proper wall. So I brought in a bunch of textures to make it look like this, all right? And I'm gonna walk you through what I did. Now, I usually shoot my own textures. I don't use stock photography, but feel free to use it, obviously, right? I mean, there's some pretty good stock images. I'm gonna show you what was normal, set it to 100% opacity. So this is it. You know, I picked it up from the ground. You know, I took some photos of, you know, the ground, and I brought it in. And for this one, I apply multiply. We will go to the modes and apply multiply. And of course, you have to be gentle with it. You can't, I don't like it like this, you know, it's too much. I do everything step by step, and I prefer to add many layers and many textures instead of all at once, and that's it. It's just too much. So for example, here, it's only 12% opacity. Okay, and then I'm going to build on to this one. Now, what I like to do is create textures for each wall separately, because it gives a more realistic feel, and there is no continuation, let's say, of the same texture over here, and on the ground. So what I did, I'm going to duplicate this, right? And I am going to keep it actually at multiply, but I am going to increase it. Actually, let me do normal, and I'll show you what I did, because this one, I wanted to use it for the ground, but I wanted to transform it. Okay, so if I use distort, for example, I'm going to zoom out. You see how I make it so that it looks like it's the ground? You have to change the perspective. Most people wouldn't think of this because they're like, well, the texture won't show that much. Why do I, you know, bother? But I think it's important. And because my work is very often printed in large scale,
yeah,
I don't want to leave any details behind. You know, I exhibit my work, and it's often like, you know, 60, 70 centimeters, inches large. I've even done work for billboards. So I want it to be, you know, pretty realistic. So I took that one. I think I did it where there was a line here anyway, and I placed it here, right? And then it's easy to just, you know, what you can do is go to your original page, right? And just select like the area, just do a quick selection. I mean, you don't have to be perfect, right? Like this, you click on your layer, and then you click on the mask, and it will apply it only to that area. Obviously, I'm going to select the, hold on, I'm going to select my object. Oops.
Quick question for you. How big is the canvas that you're working on?
You mean in pixels?
Yes.
Usually it's like 10,000.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not too large.
Yeah, I was wondering size-wise if you're printing on billboards and big large scale prints, if your files end up being pretty big, and then size-wise.
They're
Oh, I guess.
humongous. Actually, the ones that I'm doing for billboards and stuff, usually I've done work because I've done work for in Australia actually, and I recall I gave them files that were 24,000 pixels
Oh my God.
in size. And it just kind of killed me, just trying to WeTransfer them was a challenge.
Yeah,
So
I can't
anyway,
even imagine.
yeah. So I'm not going to show you like how I did all of it. What you need to do though, once you start applying the textures, as I said, is to create some shadowing with them. Don't just put the textures, because okay, this is a room, right? And if it's a real room, it's going to have shadows at the edges, correct? Mine was a small room, therefore my softbox or octabox in the front kind of eliminated a lot of the shadows. So once you're done putting your textures in, just do a curves. I like curves, right? And this thing is getting in the way. All right, so push it down, right? Do Command I to invert it, and start putting some shadows like around the edges. I mean, don't worry about being too perfect, right? Because I'm just going to show you why and how. So just put a few shadows here, here. And then what I do is I actually blur it. I go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and I blur it. Because with your hand, you can't get too perfect. So if you use the before and after for the preview, it will show you that it's actually, you see now it's a little bit better than when you do it by hand.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah. Whereas you see, if you don't do it by hand, if you don't apply the Gaussian blur, it's too much. See that? So the Gaussian blur allows you to kind of get more of an even feel on your shadows. So anyway, I am going to show you the actual textures. So there's the room. You see, even I put that crag here on the floor. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah.
Should I be zooming in, Anna? I mean, you see?
Yeah, as you want to. Yeah, that's
crack
such a
in the wall.
nice detail. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I really had to think about my textures, So let me kill this. All right. Now, before I brought in my subject, I needed to do a little bit of color grading because I want my scene to be warmer, okay? So this is the color grading that I've done. You see, I've brought in a lot more warmth. And I do this, guys, I never use one thing. There is a color balancing, there's the selective color tool, there's the hue saturation. Usually I use a combination of all three, okay? So let me start with the color balancing. I'll do it just to show you. So I affect the shadows, midtones, and the highlights in this one. Let's go to the shadows. Warm it up a little bit. I think -3. Hold on, the shadows. Minus. They're very subtle changes. As you know, with me, I because I'm too into the details, I prefer to go very slowly, as I said before. Minus. Yeah. I just don't like big changes because then, you mess up your image and it's hard to, come back from that. You see that? Right. I don't know if you can see slight change. Usually the biggest changes when you're dealing with color balance come when you're using the highlights, when you're playing with the highlights.
We had a quick question for you from the chat. Fairy asked, how long do you usually take to create your concepts and how much does it usually cost? So like, for example, with this foam room, how long did it take you to set everything up? And I'm sure, I mean, foam board's pretty cheap, so.
Yeah, I mean, the foam board wasn't expensive, like it was $30-$40. These are stuff that I have at home. You know, for some of my projects, I am inspired by things that I find in my house because, you know, I've been doing this for quite some time, right? It's a decade long, and I have a whole storage room dedicated to my photography. So I have props galore. So I go in there and I'm like, I use this for a fashion shoot. Could I reuse it for something else? And that's what I do, you know what I mean? But of course, there are other things that, okay, if it's for a client, it costs a lot more, right? Or if it's a series, like I've shown you when I went through my personal series, the series end up costing a lot more. Like, you know, I had a series that cost me, let's say, $600-$700, others like $1,000. It depends, right? But for this particular shoot, guys, my cost, I think, was like $40, $50.
I wonder if even that, because sometimes, I mean, foam board, you can find it at Michael's in the US for like 50 cents sometimes. Or
well, okay, you guys, we're in Europe, so we have
That's true.
We have a lot of inflation, too much, you know? So no, but I've done things, yeah, like you said, for a few dollars. So
yeah. And so is this room like only a couple feet high, or
yeah,
sorry if you said that. I
okay,
just was
in centimeters is like, let's say 50 centimeters or something, or 60.
Okay.
So I would say in inches, it's about 20 to 25 inches.
Cool.
It's not that big. So
yeah.
I'll take you to the selective color. Obviously, you know, I affected my yellows. You can see here, right? I pushed them towards the yellows towards the cyan, and the yellow towards, again, to the right. Make sure, I actually should have done this. When you do these changes, I have one thing that I'm going to tell you to remember. Usually when you use selective color, change the mode to color, okay? If you don't, it will include luminosity changes in it, and you want to keep, usually you want to keep the contrast unaffected, okay? And you can do that by switching to color. In this case though, because I actually want a little bit less contrast, I left it to normal. Again, that's a detail, but anyway, it might be useful.
Yeah, really good tip.
Yeah, that matters actually when you're doing fashion and you're changing colors constantly. You have to put it not to normal but to color, because you're gonna lose a lot of contrast, okay? But in this case, I want it because when the sunlight comes in, we lose a little bit of contrast, and that's okay. Then next, what I did, I wanted to give a little bit more life to my woolen ball, and I selected it again, and I repeated the process that I did for the whole scene, but just for the woolen ball, okay? Again, with the yellows, pushing the yellows a little bit, okay? And then the last step, I thought there was a little bit of red in the whole scene. So I went to hue saturation. You see here how it is to color? Have you noticed here? Again, that's because of the same thing. I don't want to lose too much contrast, so I put it to color. So I pushed the saturation down a little bit, and then because I wanted to bring the scene down, make it a little bit more yellow, but I cooled down the reds. Do you know how you can cool down the reds? Using this slider, this slider here. Okay, yes. So it's, can you see the difference now? Look at the back wall here when there was red. You see that?
Yes.
And why did I do that, guys? Again, it's about reality, because when you have light coming into the room, it really hits just one wall. It doesn't make the entire room like red, right? Or yellow. if it's a big enough room, and I'm trying to give the perception that it's a big enough room, because my subject, I will make it smaller, right? Okay, so that's it. So I'm done with my room, and I am ready to bring in my subject. This is my subject, okay? So
cool.
Now you see that the gray behind is not the same gray, right? You can't get it right. I swear, I took the foam board to the printer and I'm like, okay, I took a cutout of my actual printing, my background, right? And I'm like, I want to do the same. We did it like 30 times and it wouldn't come out the same. It's very hard because printed paper is different. Like I will show you. I mean, look, it's similar, but it's not the same.
Right.
But that's not a problem, right? Because we have Photoshop.
Yes.
I mean, why do we care when we have Photoshop? So now I did it, guys. I did a tutorial before with Adobe where I have a very in-depth one where I show you how to select and cut out an object with even more complex background and refine your mask with, with the hair. So if you're interested, you can find that. But today I wanted to show you a shortcut that I think is pretty interesting. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna duplicate the layer, right? And I'm gonna switch this to soft light. I'm gonna remove the original layer. You see this, right? Soft light, okay? And then I'm gonna do it one more time. Soft light gets even darker, right? Correct? Well, actually, I forgot to do something first. Okay, sorry. Okay, let's first do a quick selection. Very quick, right? So we're gonna select our subject and it selects it, right? And then, right, what do you see here? Oof.
Yeah.
Oof.
A little bit of
right?
fringing. Yeah.
Fringing, awful. Okay. Awful.
Not horrible though for
No,
it to
it's
just
awful.
in one click, but
it's awful. But because, today we want to be lazy and we want to have shortcuts, that's what we're going to do now. We're going to do the soft light approach. So click, leave that. And then, hold on. Oh, sorry. We're going to go to soft light, right? As I said, 100% opacity. And let's do it again. All right. And you see now it's pretty dark, correct?
Right.
Now, that original layer, we're going to push it up on top. And we're going to make it visible, correct?
Correct.
Correctamundo. And I'm going to do Command I to not have it visible. And then what am I doing? Okay. Zoom in. And then I'm going to start painting in. Or you can do it the other way. So for example, if you want to keep it as it was, right? What you can do then is delete this. There. Boom.
Yeah. Did you tape the yarn under her eyes, or how did you get it to stay there?
Yeah. That I actually used a type of how shall I say? It's like a liquid.
Like a adhesive for makeup, like prosthetic type?
No, it's used for food.
Oh, okay.
It's used for food, yes. It's actually it's like honey, but it has a consistency of honey, but it's transparent. Okay. So yeah, it's
So cool.
yeah. Guys, I'm sorry, I'm going too fast. I don't know if I'm going too fast.
Yeah, let us know how the speed is in the chat, but I think you're doing great.
I'm gonna repeat this again because I think I did it too fast and we were talking. I messed things up here because we were talking anyway. I'm gonna delete that for now. So I want to repeat this because this is might be a little bit too difficult, and maybe somebody lost it, you know, while I was doing it. So okay, you bring in the subject in a normal mode. You cut it out using your select the subject. Okay, you're not too concerned about what it chooses, right? And then you duplicate this twice, and those duplicate layers, you turn them into soft light, like we did here, these two layers here. These are just soft light. And then what you do, you take the original layer and you put it on top. And then you click that, that's normal mode, okay? And the normal mode, then you start reveal, Command D. And then what you do, you start deleting the edges and you can see what's underneath. So this is how my subject ended up being. Can you ask if there's any questions about this? Because I know I went too fast.
I think you're good, but yeah, let us know if any of you have any questions on how she did that and how we kind of got that look.
So basically the idea is that the soft light mode blends the edges of hair with the background. So it does that for you. So when you use the normal mode on top, all you need to do is delete that fringing on the sides, and it reveals the lower layers, which are the soft light. And that's why it allows you to do perfection. Honestly, I did not use the refine mask at all. This is how it was. It's just that now I'm going a bit too fast and I'm talking at the same time, so I can't focus too much on this. So that's why.
I totally understand. I think you did a great job explaining it. It seems
all right.
Really
I hope so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so,
there was a couple questions that came up. One, can you zoom in a bit so we can see the blending reveal?
The blending reveal. Yes, of course. Hold on. Right. I'm going to zoom in at the hair because I think that's important.
Yeah, so we can see.
Right. Absolutely. Let's do that. Okay. Now, here is the first one. I am going to actually show you how normal would be. Look at normal.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, look at the normal. I just did a very quick selection. What is this? It's awful. Okay. Then you switch that to soft light. Look what happens. It blends it, but it's not very, how shall I say, it's a little bit faded, right? So what do? You do this one more time. What happens, guys? Look at it here. It's the hair exactly as it should be, right? So now you can show the original layer in its normal. And what did I do? I took my brush and just erase the edges, because look, if I am disabling it, right? Enable, all I did was this. I took and I just erased the edges, and that was it. So is that cool? Is that clear?
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thanks for zooming in on that. And then Ferry had a question about perspective, and I don't know if you want to get into that now or at the end. I know you want to show some other
let's do it now, of course.
Okay, so wondering how you get your model's perspective the same with your background's perspective when you shoot your model.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Okay, first you have to write things down, right? Draw your scene. Draw your scene with the ball and the model on it. Then you're saying, okay, a realistic like woolen ball, life size would be, this big, let's say, I don't know, 30 inches, 40 inches. What I did is that I dropped my camera to a level when I was shooting the room, to a level where it was kind of like straight. It wasn't looking up. Okay. Because I didn't want to have any distortion. It was straight on. So basically, the camera, the center of the camera was right about here where the woolen ball was. Okay. A side note, when I'm doing fashion, I like to distort perspective. I actually shoot up and I use a shorter lens, and there is tons of like weird distortion going on. In this fine art settings, I don't. And actually, I want to tell you about the lens. I used a 50 millimeter lens. It's very important. It's very important what lens you use when you're doing compositing. I think the best choice is a 50 millimeter. It shows you reality. Okay. And also I didn't want any blurriness. I want everything to be sharp. If I'm using my usual 85, 105, even if I'm using, let's say, an aperture of 13 or 15, I'm going to get blurriness in the background. And I didn't want that. Whereas with my 50 millimeter, a 12, a 13 aperture got everything super sharp. Because you don't want to make mistakes, like, make a mistake in shooting your, can you imagine if you shot your subject, let's say, because you thought it would look better with an 85 millimeter and this with 50 millimeter, it wouldn't look the same. And she would have blurry sides, and it wouldn't look correct. So when I shot my model, I actually sat down on the ground because she is on a ball. I am not going to shoot her straight level like I did with the room. No, I sat down. So there was, but I was far enough, guys, so as not to distort her. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you for explaining that.
Something else I forgot, because that shows like how obsessed I am with getting it real. Do you see this highlight here on the sweater and stuff? So here's me thinking, wait a minute, she's close. When the sun, if you know about lighting, when the sun hits, a very strong sun hits the wall that you're in, that you're standing in front of, there is some reflection going back into the model. So to even make it more realistic, I actually put a third light source here with a warm color gel hitting her clothes. You see that? So that we get that shadow. So side note on that.
Yeah, such great attention to detail. It's awesome.
So what happened, remember I told you that I wanted my, I shot my subject without a warm color gel. That's because I wanted to be able to control it later in Camera Raw and Photoshop instead of having her being too orange and having to reduce the orange. So I went and did that. I could have done it in Camera Raw, to be honest with you. I do a lot of it in Camera Raw, but because of the needs of the tutorial, I left it, to do it in Photoshop using, again, color balance. You see that? I want to show you, zoom in a little bit. I mean, that was the original, okay? And it doesn't match the scene that much. So if you use color balance and you impact your highlights, you push them towards the yellow, right? You match, it matches the scene better. You see that?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's such a nice, subtle difference.
Yes, not too much though, because again, realistically, when you're standing in front, not in front of the window, but let's say a little bit behind, are you yellow? I mean, take a photo of yourself. You're not yellow. The wall is yellow, but you're not that yellow. So another thing that I did for my subject, the pants. You know, those were PJs, by the way, and I didn't want them to look like PJs. I wanted them to look more like, I don't know, circus. I wanted to give a circus vibe. This is why I did the makeup with this thing here. You see?
Yes.
So, I mean, that's pretty easy to do. Please don't use Liquify. If you ever want to create something and enlarge something, I mean, the lazy way is to actually take the Liquify or the Puppet Warp tool and just stretch things, but I don't like stretched pixels. So the best way to do it is just clone it, right? Just get an empty layer and make it hard, make the brush hard, right? As hard as you can, because, and just, let's see, clone, where am I? Yeah, clone. So take, for example, here, somewhere here, and just go like, now I'm not being very, you understand that I'm not being detailed at all. What I do originally, I create the shape, right? Because the edges can't be soft. Like, let me show you, if you were to clone with soft, does it look good? It's awful. You have to use a very hard brush just to establish the edge of what you want to do. Then you can make it softer and go inside and fix the individual parts here. You see what I'm doing? Like,
yeah.
And I went one at a time, choosing the hards and making sure like the lighting was the same. So I'm thinking, well, here it hits the light. So I don't know, I'm going to choose this hard and I'm going to place it here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And here, and I'm going to put it here. I mean, it's detail, detail, detail. So that's how I did it.
That's amazing. That's such a great tip, using
Yes,
the
so
hard
first,
edge to get.
yes, hard edges, you to create first the hard edges and then inside use the soft edges for the cloning. Okay, that's with everything that you want to clone. Hard on the outside, soft on the inside. Like an egg, guys, like an egg. Okay, so now I want to take it to the most interesting part, I think. It's to what is missing in this whole thing? Did you notice from the beginning? Did anybody notice? No?
Yeah. I know Carol has been paying close attention. She
Okay,
said,
Carol,
I thought I was seeing them poofed out earlier. So yeah, let us know if any of you remember what was from the beginning. Like, I'm gonna have to scroll back in the stream.
What was missing here? What is unrealistic? The lack of shadow, right?
Yes.
Hello, shadow. I mean, there's hard light, right? Sun is the hardest light source, correct? And it's not diffused here. It's coming straight through the window. So obviously there's going to be a shadow of our subject. And I can't teach you how to recognize light and what it does, but I will show you how to make a realistic shadow. Now, we're going to put everything on one layer, right? And we will select the subject again. We don't have to be exact, okay? Don't worry that, oops, what did I do? What did I do? Command D. Let me do it again, select my subject. All right, Command C, Command V, we're pasting it here. And I'm gonna do select, reselect, so that it selects it. And I'm gonna take my brush and paint over it. Okay. Command D to deselect, and I'm gonna move it. Wonderful shadow, right? No, no. So what do you think we should do here? Now, first, I want you to notice something. The model is not standing. How is she standing towards the wall? Is she facing the window so that only her profile is showing? No, it's kind of 2/3. So in that way, it's a difficult shadow. So you know what I did? I actually went, because I want to get it right. I want to get it absolutely right. I went and I put a doll on top of the woolen ball so that I would observe what kind of shadow it creates, because it wasn't that simple. As I said, the model was not standing profile. If she was standing profile, it would have been different. So that kind of helped me visualize what I needed to do. The way to make this shadow more realistic is through, again, the transform tools. And we're going to use the distort, okay? And we are going to push it because it's narrow. When the shadow falls here and the subject is not turned full length like this facing the wall, then their shadow is narrow. So, and I'm also going to use perspective. You see? Oops. You see how I'm pushing it? Can I do it again? So you see? Hold on. Oopsie. Hold on. Let's do it again so you see it again. So transform. I'll use perspective first so that you see what I'm doing. See that? See what I'm doing? I'm moving her the way she's placed. And then now I'm going to use the distort and push the shadow in. That much. Okay. When we're on the wall and we're at 45 degrees angle, it actually has to look 45 degrees. So we minimize it right about there, because you see this angle, it has to be about 45 degrees, because my light, the sun was at 45 degrees. So I'm going to go like that. Yep, that's about right. Okay, the shadow here at the bottom, obviously, because there is less lighting, it can't be this obvious, right? So we're gonna kill it a little bit. Oops, do I have it hard edge? Yes. See that? Just a little bit. Okay. All right, still not good enough. What do we do? Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Should it be this much? Should it be this much? Whoop. Or should it be this much? Or this much? What do you think? Hard or soft? Come on, let's see how much you know about lighting. Hard or soft?
Let us know in the chat. What do you think? Hard or soft? Curious. We're a little delayed, so we'll see what everyone says.
It was hard lighting, therefore the shadow has to be hard. I can't make it soft. It's not a soft box, it's not a diffused light outside to have this. It's a hard light, so it needs to be this. Okay, but it's too dark, so we will reduce the opacity. So that's it. That's our shadow. All right. So that was actually my original shadow. It was actually even thinner.
Wow.
So shall I walk you through the steps? We copy the subject, copy paste it. We brush it with a black brush. We distort it with the distort tool and we change the perspective. And then we apply Gaussian blur, but not too much. We can still see the outline. And then we reduce the opacity to approximately 50%. Okay?
So amazing.
Sounds good. Okay. Then what I did for my subject is my usual dodging and burning. Again, I did a very, very detailed tutorial last time on dodging and burning techniques, and I don't want to bore you with that. But I'm just going to show you the basics. First of all, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that you see what I did. You see that? Subtle change, but big change. For me, guys, dodging and burning is everything. I didn't use it as much in this kind of image, but in some other images, oh my God, like with fine art, it can separate a B plus image from like an A plus plus, you know what I mean? So you guys got to work on that, you know, dodging and burning. And the way I do it is with curves. I create two curves, one for the highlights and one for the shadows. And I go here to flow, and usually my flow is set to about 3 to 4%, no more. For clothes and hair, it might be more. It might be 7 or 8, but for the face, no way. Okay, 3% is the maximum. And I start. The first thing I do is take care of imperfections. Okay, shadows in imperfections. In this case, it's a child. She didn't have that many imperfections, and I'm not doing a beauty, you know, image, so it wasn't that much. So basically, this was just, sorry, this was the highlights. Was mainly I wanted to erase the brows. I thought it would be a little bit more avant-garde if I gave more light to the brows and the makeup that we applied here.
Yeah.
And I usually, by the way, I see a lot of photographers who do the eyes. I don't do the eyes. I used to do it in the beginning, and guys, it looks fake. You know what I mean?
Especially, it does. It's so true.
Fake. It's fake. Oh my God, I can't even tell you. I need photographers to stop overdoing the eyes. It's the #1 lesson to improve your photography.
Yes.
I mean, do subtle highlight changes all over and just leave the eyes. And if you want to do something, maybe go to camera raw and do some radial adjustments, tiny bit for the whole area here to brighten it up, but leave them alone. We're not creating aliens.
Such good advice.
Yeah. I mean, look at it. I didn't do that much. That you see, I didn't change the eyes at all, and she still looks avant-garde. She still looks good, right? Yeah. So that's dodging and burning. Let me know if you have any questions. I went through it very fast.
Can you just show them individually? So shadows and highlights, so we can see before and after zoomed in like
yes.
This. So that's your highlights, right? Okay.
Yes. I'm just gonna go ahead and do a little bit to actually show people, because I think dodging and burning is an art form. So let's say we use this one, do Command I to start revealing. Set it to wide. I'm gonna set the flow a little bit higher so you guys can see it. And I have a lot of fun usually doing clothes, because you can go further with clothes than you can with, by the way, hardness has to be at 0. And don't put highlights where there are none. That's a mistake. You actually emphasize pre-existing highlights. If you try to put highlights where there are none, let me say, for example, here, and I start doing this, I mean, how awful is that? Okay. Yeah. I'm going to work only with, I already have highlights. So like here you see at the edges where I have highlights, here. Mind you, I'm overdoing it now, okay? Like I go blind doing dodging and burning, because I do it, I don't blink. I do it so seriously, I'm like nuts. But over here, because people can't see it, if I do it like with 2 or 3% flow, they're not going to see anything, and they're going to fall asleep, and they're going to be like, what is she doing? But you see, sometimes, you know what? I go into, I'll zoom in 100%, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, there's a highlight here, and a highlight here, and a highlight there. And it's like, half an hour later, you're like, Jesus Christ, my eyes are burning.
Yeah. And then you're like, where did my day go? I spent the whole day dodging and burning.
But then you will go, okay, now I see it. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's so subtle, but you have to do this. And in this case, I think my shadows weren't that dramatic. I went a little bit on the sweater, and there was like some shadow, some highlight here that I didn't want, that I fixed. But other than that, it was very straightforward. Okay, let's move on to the part of the window here, the sky, because outside you see there's no sky. This was like my background, so I went and put a sky. I used like the Adobe stock photos, and I grabbed a sky that was like a sunrise sky. And basically, you know, if you have your scene, all you do is, you know, we can quickly select this, right? Whatever, I'm not gonna be. And I just applied the sky in it, right? This is my sky. By the way, I'm gonna show you how it was normal. Where is it? Oh, I have another layer, duh. Okay, yeah, duh. I was like, why isn't anything showing? Yeah, so this is the original. You see how I chose it for the warmth to be down here, so that it fits the image. So I chose it in here, but obviously it's awful. So I used luminosity. I decided, you know what, I'm not going to use it. I could have used actually normal and then reduce the opacity. But I just didn't like the blue. I didn't want my scene to have blue. It doesn't fit in. This is, you know, my whole color grading is this, you know, warm, there is green in it and yellow. And that's about it. So I didn't like that. So when you change it to luminosity, it takes away the colors. And then it looks much better, right?
So much better.
Rather than the blue. I just want to zoom in so that people can see. Let's change it back to normal. Even if I reduce opacity, there's still that blue. I don't like it. I don't like it. It's not good. So luminosity taken care of, boom. And then if you want to add the warmth, you add it with a color fill. I took, you know, like a red. You see that I chose a color picker, the red here. I applied it to the bottom. You can see that, right? I want it here and here. I think I did it. And then I just reduced the opacity to about like 25-35%. Again, very, very, very subtle. I want to do it one step at a time. And then what I did, I'm like, I needed more warmth, because when the light comes in, it also affects the inside of the window, right? And there was already light through my, you know, shooting the scene, but I wanted to make it more visible. So I just used selective color again, and you see the yellows, I pushed it towards cyan here. I made it warmer. Okay. So that's our window. Let me show you again the whole thing, before, after.
So nice. Yeah.
Right? And I mean, I even applied the selective color here, just again, for more realism. So that's that.
Carol asked, what about just enlarging that piece to move the blue away? But it looked like you just kind of had like a little cutout of it, right?
What do you mean?
Enlarge the sky?
To enlarge the piece to move away the blue.
Yeah.
But
I think she's talking about the actual image of the sky and just moving like I guess.
But how would you move it?
Yeah,
how would you move it? It would move up and you wouldn't get the clouds and everything.
Yeah.
But it's super easy with not subtract, with luminosity. You know, I mean, it does the job. I wanted the sky because I wanted an ominous feeling, you know? And look how nicely it blends this with the wall, the color grading,
Yeah.
it matches. It's all about matching.
Yeah,
Okay.
that looks really good.
All right. So let's see. Yeah, that was my before. What was that? Yeah. So the last thing I always do is color balance. Okay. It's the last color balance. I do color balancing throughout, but before I kind of finish the image, sort of, I apply another color balance. In this case, I just wanted it a little bit colder. I removed more of the red. Okay. And now I left kind of the last part to show you about camera raw. Okay. Because I think camera raw is an underused tool that can transform the image. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Elena, you're rushing, girl. Okay. Sorry, guys. You know, I'm sorry. There were some things to fix here.
Oh, yes, the eyes.
Yes, you see, I left it last because I wanted to show you two ways. I mean, Photoshop is amazing because it has the spot healing brush tool. It does a lot of the hard work, but I wanted to give you can use clone. If you use the clone tool, you can use it on a separate layer, an empty layer, right? And just for non-destructive editing. Unfortunately, when you use the spot healing brush tool, you need to use it on the actual layer. Otherwise, it doesn't work, right? So I'm just gonna do Shift Option Command E to get the whole layer, and I will show you. It does a pretty good job of like adding and subtracting, but sometimes, you know what, it's not a perfect tool. So I use both. I use clone and I use the spot healing brush. I mean, in this case, I think I use the clone tool. So anyway, this is my fixed image. I pushed it upwards. You can see, and straighten up the hair. And then applied the color balance. And that's it. And we're ready for camera raw. Okay. So let's do Shift Option Command E to create a new layer and go into camera raw. How many people use camera raw when they're already in Photoshop? Because I use it all the time.
I do as well. It's one of my favorite things in Photoshop. I always use it.
So you know why? Also, it's that it allows you, first of all, to see if you clipped your highlights or your shadows, right? It's easy to overdo it in Photoshop and keep on adding and adding, color balancing, contrast. But then when you go to camera raw, you're like, oops, you know, I clipped my highlights and all. Okay, in this case, we don't have a problem, obviously. So I'm just gonna increase the contrast a little bit. Okay, but what I like about camera raw is that it allows me to bring more attention to my subject in a very easy way. All right.
Yes.
So let's first do, I would say, let's not do, I'm going to do a little vignetting, but that's not how just a tiny bit. I'm going to show you before and after, just a tiny bit. Now, what I'm going to do is go here and use the linear gradient. In a big room, there's not a lot of light here in the front. And when there's light in the front, it takes attention away from your subject. So I'm going to reduce my exposure and drag this to make this darker. Yeah? because that's how a room with a door closed because she's locked up. Let's not, we don't want to give the impression that she's out in the open and there's this large airy room. She's locked up. She's desperate to get out. She's pulling her hair out. That's why they're so messy. She's like, get me out of here. I can't take it. So anyway, yes, we are darkening the scene below. Okay. Now I am going to go and create a new mask. And this time I am going to create radial. I'm going to choose the radial gradient. And I am going to use a pretty large radial gradient. And I am going to just slightly increase the exposure, right? Now, maybe like this. And because my light wasn't this much high, I've placed it right about here. This is where my light is, okay? And then I'm gonna create another radial gradient. This time just for the window. I'm gonna increase exposure just a little bit, but I'm going to warm it up a little bit, okay? And then I am going to go to the dehaze and dehaze it a little bit. See this? I don't know if it's too subtle. I'm gonna make it like, have you used the dehaze tool before?
Yeah.
Of course, but it's overdone, right? How many times? Oh my God.
When you see the dehaze used and everything all of a sudden like overly saturated.
Yes. If you notice, I actually did it at -5, at -4. I mean, it's so, it's invisible unless you see the whole image. When I click you before and after, you'll see. So, but I am not going to apply to her face. I'm just going to keep it here, right? Because I just want it around that area. And increase the saturation a little bit and the temperature a little bit, right? That's about it. Then again, create new mask. And this time I'm going to select my object. Oops, did I select object? Why? Anyway, yes, I'll select the object. And I want to reduce the exposure even more. Because you know what? The light from the window, where is the window? It's high up, correct? So it's not hitting, there's not a lot of light hitting the ball, the woolen ball. But because I had a softbox in the front and it's a small room, obviously it gave it more light than it should have, correct? So we are just reducing it a little bit. Another, I'm going to create a new mask, and this time I am going to select my subject. And I am going to slightly increase the exposure, 0.10, increase the shadows. Well, not the highlights, below, shadows. Shadow, shadow, shadow here, I think, okay. All right, let's see the before and after. Do you see the orientation of the light now? That it's much more focused towards my subject.
So much better.
Yeah. I mean, of course, this was my final one. I took more time with it. But yeah, that's before and that's after. It's a huge, huge change. It totally focuses the eye right where the subject is.
Yeah. I always find camera raw to be so powerful at the end to clean everything up and bring it all together. It's like the best tool.
Yes, it is. So, I mean, guys, yeah, we went from this to this. I don't know if you have any questions.
Let us know if anybody has any questions. And I know you had, we don't have too much longer. I know you had another image. Maybe we could just like look at the breakdown or...
Well, actually, no, it was actually the same with camera. I wanted to, again, it's the same thing with camera raw that I wanted to show you one more time how camera raw works in the same way. like you see, I've shot this, and again, a quick lesson on lighting. This was for the cover of a singer, and the name of it in Greek is like Under the Sea. It's called Vithos in Greek. So the fish, by the way, is real. It was shot next to her. I had it like with chopsticks holding it here, like my
Oh my
assistant.
God.
Yes, because the song was about like being like she used thread as a reference, that she was like enveloped in thread and then she broke free. So I used it conceptually. And I don't know if you can see, I actually used the same kind of like ornaments on her face. I put them on the actual fish. Guys, I
Wow.
glued them on a fish. I glued them on the fish. It was
Oh
so
my God.
silly. Yes. And, you know, I picked these things up that actually looked like seaweed. And I had her like, you know, I strapped them to her. And the hair, I had multiple fans blowing the hair up. And I used lighting coming from the top directly above her, because we want, you know how when you're under the sea, there's light coming from above. Again, hard light. But then I also, because she had shimmery makeup, you see here, I wanted to show that. And because, okay, the light, when it hits the sand underwater, it reflects upwards. So I used another light down here to show, I mean, to not have any shadows here, to eliminate the shadows, okay? But even doing so, I wasn't happy. And by the way, these are all textures in the back. And this is what, you know, Camera Raw did. Okay, I don't know the bubbles. I put the bubbles, obviously. But everything else was done in Camera Raw. So, like, let's see what we can do again here. Filter, Camera Raw. Okay. Now, remember, I actually had told you about the eyes, not to play with the eyes too much.
Yeah.
I referenced like using Camera Raw if you have to. Like, this is what I meant. Like, you go into the radial gradient, right? And maybe you up the highlights a little bit, the shadows and the exposure, and just do this. Okay, I don't think I'm gonna do the fish too. Don't the eyes match?
Yeah,
right?
it's amazing.
You see, I mean, just like this. I don't like too much. So let's zoom back out. Okay. Oh, I know what I wanted to show you, why I had this. One of the nicest things that I like in Camera Raw is this color mixer. Don't you love it, Anna?
I do. I do. It's one of my favorite tools in there as well.
Because you know what, you're in Photoshop and you're doing all these things with color balancing and selective color and this, and with this, it's a one-stop shopping with the color mixer. I mean, okay, for example, I wanted to not have a lot of blue because I wanted to have the feeling of a lake. She was under a lake, not the sea. And lakes are usually green, right? So let's go to hue. Let's take the tool and point to something blue. And let's drag it to the left. What do you know? I'm going to go too much so that you can see the difference. You see that?
Yeah.
It changes the hue from the blue. And because it not only had blue, but it also had a little bit of a magenta, a slightly bit of magenta. So it changes that. And I'm just going to go maybe this much. You see that?
Yeah.
So, and maybe if I want to do a little bit more. Okay. Yeah. So I think this gives the feeling of a lake much more.
Definitely.
So we can use linear gradient again. Create new mask, linear grade. Usually when I want to redirect light from the bottom to the top, what I will do is apply an equal amount of linear gradient. Let's say in this case, I'll do minus 0.65, and I'll go through the whole scene, right? I'll apply it here, and then create new mask, again, linear gradient, and again, exposure, up it the same amount that I reduced it by. So it was, let's say, minus 0.65 plus 6.5, something like that. And I'll go like this. Okay. So I'll let you know. You see?
Yeah.
Redirection of light. So I did quite a few more things. Okay, it's not that. It's never that simple.
No.
But okay, remember what we said about that dehaze? This is a perfect place to add dehaze. So let's choose radial gradient. I chose radial, right? Did I? I don't know.
Yep.
Right. Okay. And I will increase the temperature a little bit, and then let's dehaze. I think because there is darkness here, you can push it more. Because it's the only time that you're allowed to use this much dehaze if you're underwater. Seriously, right? Because you can do that because there is a lot more light up here. And even if I pushed it this high, it's not that much. You see that?
Yeah.
Now, obviously,
it's such a nice effect.
Yes, it is. But I don't want to do it too much to the face because it's just, I like the contrast that I created on the face. So, and anyway, I went again, and these pearls by default, they're like so white that they just clip the highlights. So I went and fixed that a little bit, you know, push them down. And over here, you know, where the makeup is, I highlighted it more. So, I mean, here's the before, here's the after. And here's the final image after like going through 2 and 3 rounds. And I'm sorry, I didn't know that we would have a lot of time, but I had a lot of textures to create this part here that looks like she's submerged. And what I usually do, I chose like stock photography from Adobe, like I chose the ocean. Different, I don't like, one advice that I'll give you when you use textures, don't just use one. Use multiple ones. Best to use them, let's say at 10, 12, 15% opacity, and use another one and then another one instead of just one basic one and you're done. Because it's fun to use textures because you never know what you're gonna get with a texture. So like for this image, I think I imported like honestly 6 or 7 different oceans, the sea.
Wow.
And usually because it's dark, you're going to be using multiply a lot. Okay, so I use I think at the end I ended up using like 3 or 4 of them, but it does allow you flexibility. So yeah, that's this one. I don't know if you have any questions.
Let's see. Marcia asked, how did you do the bubbles? I don't know if you have that handy. We have like 5 minutes left.
Usually, you know, the bubbles, I have a, what do you call, I buy from a store the what the kids use to make bubbles.
Like just a little blow bubble mixture?
Yes, the blow bubble. I actually have a more professional, because I actually use it for photo shoots, the huge ones. But for these ones, I use the small ones. And in this case, by the way, I forgot to say that I also lit the background. So the background was blue to begin with.
You don't
So,
happen to have the original image handy, do you?
uh,
If
I
not, it's
do,
okay. But
I do, but it's a huge PSB file.
okay.
And by the time it loads, it's what you see except the fish. I want to show you. Unfortunately, I don't have it. Shoot, because you see, I didn't know that we were gonna have so much time. I was
I know.
faster. So, guys, she was naked. This is a texture. This is a texture. That is the power of textures. It's a texture of seaweed.
Ah,
Yes. And when I apply it up there, I usually I use two textures and I applied on it. And then I cut it with a hard edge to look like she was wearing it.
so cool.
I originally wanted to go with nude, but I'm like, it adds interest. It's almost like a tattoo / clothing item. You don't know what it is.
Totally.
Yeah. So yeah, the bubbles, to answer the question, I photographed them. So the only things that were not here was these two adorable little fish. This one's real. The thread's real. This, what she's holding in front, is real. It's just these two fish. And you got to notice something. You see that they're blurry, right? You have to know how much to blur. Like for this shoot, I used, I think it was my 105 millimeter, which means that, you know, because I wanted a little bit of blurriness. And so when you're underwater, you don't want everything to be sharp, right?
Right.
You need things to be dreamy. Therefore, you know, the background should be blurry. Hence the blurry seaweed in the background and the fish. So you got to work hard at determining like, okay, here is, let's say I'm zooming in. You see here, she starts, you see how she's a little bit blurry here.
Mm-hmm.
And here where the thread is very sharp. See here where I'm showing you. Can you tell?
Yeah.
Very sharp here, but as you go here, it's a little bit blurry. So I made the fish to match the exact kind of like depth of field of this part of my model. It's something you can't really teach it. You just have to, it's experience by doing so many of these things to know exactly how much you need to blur each
Absolutely.
thing put in. Yeah, there's no other way, guys.
Yeah.
And just be very careful with everything that you do. Love what you do, and you know, don't just do it to finish it. Step away from it, leave it for a day, let it sleep, you know, rest your eyes and come back. And you will see all of your mistakes and you'll be like, what the heck was I thinking?
Yeah.
And you fix it. So always keep your layers. I have huge layers that I keep. Then, you know, once I'm done and I leave it for like a few days, unless of course it's for a client, then I need, you know, to give it fast. If it's for me, personal, fine art, I let it rest. I'm not in a rush. And then I created a separate TIFF file, and then different JPEGs with full resolution, then smaller JPEGs. So there's never any fear of losing the work, or if I want to go back. There's actually images that you know, with my eye, as you get more experience, you go back to images you've done in the past and you're like, oh crap, I could have done a better job.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, awesome, I have the original, let me play with it. And you end up with something a lot better.
Yeah, it's so much fun to go back and fix up old work. I do that all the time. And then you don't have to come up with a new idea. You already had the genius idea. You just have to add the skills. So
yeah. Well, unless you're me, when you're sitting at night and you can't sleep because, you know, I only sleep like 4 or 5 hours and you're thinking, okay, what's my next project? What's my next idea? And thinking conceptually, you know, it's fun to be a conceptual photographer. And I think a lot of my clients, they choose me for that, because even when I give them fashion, I don't give them straightforward fashion. it has to have like a concept in it. I don't like, okay, here's a beautiful background. Okay, start shooting the model in nice clothes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Elena. It was a pleasure hosting you today and learning
My
from you.
pleasure.
It was really amazing. I love what you created. And thank you, everyone, for joining us over on YouTube and Behance, wherever you are tuning in from today. Stick around and join Andrew Hawk-Rattle on a Firefly stream coming up next, where he will take your prompt and put it in to come up with some storybook images. So that will be super fun. And be sure to come back and see us here on Adobe Live. Have a great rest of your day and take care. Bye.
Bye, guys.